Welcome to the Depth Dive. If you've been following health news, really at all lately, you know that GLP-1 weight loss drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, the whole family, they've been called, well, one of the biggest medical breakthroughs in generations.
Absolutely. They really are changing lives. But they're also shaking up the legal world and, honestly, the financial forecasts for healthcare across the globe.
Yeah, and that brings us to this central tension we found looking at our sources. How do we reconcile the miracle of these super effective drugs with these, frankly, terrifying legal battles popping up over serious side effects, maybe even permanent ones? It feels like we're watching two massive forces heading right for each other.
And that collision, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're basically tracking two timelines, and they're both speeding up.
Okay.
So on one hand, you've got these mounting legal challenges, growing concern about adverse events that go way beyond the stomach issues people know about.
Right.
And then on the other hand, you have this huge push policy technology towards mass adoption. We're talking these drugs getting into potentially millions of new hands starting in just a couple of years, around 2026.
Wow. Okay, so our mission today is to kind of synthesize the key details on both sides, like the really serious new side effect that's driving lawsuits, and also these big policy changes that are about to blow the doors open on access.
Precisely. If you're trying to keep up with where health is going, this is pretty crucial stuff to understand right now.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. For the last, year or two, the main safety headline has been gastroparesis, right? Stomach paralysis.
Yeah, that's been the big one discussed publicly.
Which is, it sounds awful, a really debilitating digestive issue. But our sources are suggesting the legal focus is, rapidly shifting away from the GI stuff.
That's right. It's moving towards something much rarer, potentially, but maybe far more devastating in its impact.
And why the shift? Is there something strategic there?
Well, what's interesting, or maybe telling, is the strategy. Gastroparesis, while it's widespread and causes real suffering, the damage is often seen as, well, non-permanent or transient.
Oh, okay.
Which makes it harder, legally speaking, to argue for huge, irreversible damages in court. So the new litigation threat, it zeroes in on an issue where the injury is permanent, clearly definable.
And that is NAIO.
NAION. That sounds clinical and serious. What does that actually mean for a patient, and why is it, legally powerful?
So, NAION stands for Non-Arteritic Anterior Ischemic Optic Neuropathy. Fundamentally, it's a sudden blockage, a lack of blood flow to the optic nerve, which causes acute damage. For the person experiencing it, this means a risk of sudden, really dramatic vision loss, sometimes complete blindness.
Blindness, wow.
And the absolute key factor here, the thing driving these new lawsuits against Ozempic and Wegovy manufacturers, is the permanence.
The vision loss tied to NAION is explicitly described in the sources as permanent and irreversible. We've shifted from talking about severe stomach upset to potentially sudden permanent blindness as the focus of these legal fights.
That really underscores the severity, even if it's a low probability event. But it seems strange, a metabolic drug possibly causing a vascular event in the eye. Is there any theory emerging about how they might be linked?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question right now for scientists and lawyers. One idea being looked at is that the really rapid changes the drug causes, in weight, blood pressure, metabolism, might make certain susceptible people more prone to this kind of ischemic event.
The speed of the change itself?
Possibly.
Yeah.
But other studies are digging into the GLP-1 receptor mechanism itself. These receptors aren't just in the gut, they're in lots of tissues, including ones involved in regulating blood vessels.
Okay.
So if the drug is subtly affecting the microvasculature, that could theoretically provide a pathway for a sudden blockage in the very delicate blood supply of the optic nerve.
So still trying to figure out the exact how.
Exactly. It's very much an evolving area of science, but the focus on permanent vision loss just makes it a devastating possibility in the drug's risk profile.
Irreversible damage, fueling these high-stakes lawsuits, happening right now. It feels like such a crazy irony that while this battle over permanent harm is heating up in court, the rest of the world pharma policy is basically full steam ahead preparing for mass access.
It is a stark contrast.
Which creates this enormous challenge, right? For regulators, for public health. How does this new focus on severe permanent vision loss square with the massive expansion we're apparently expecting in, what, the next 18 months?
It definitely ramps up the urgency for really clear, informed consent. The whole pharmaceutical landscape is shifting to knock down the two biggest hurdles for patients.
Yeah.
How you take the drug and how much it costs.
Right, the injections and the price tag.
Let's tackle the how first.
Okay.
For a lot of people, the self-injection thing is a barrier. Psychologically, physically,
Sure.
well, that's about to change.
Yeah.
Soon, we're heading into what some are calling the Wegovy in a pill era, or more technically, the age of oral semaglutide.
A pill version that gets rid of the injection hurdle completely.
Exactly.
Now, just saying a pill probably undersells the science here, right? Because peptide drugs, these big protein molecules, they usually just get obliterated by stomach acid. How did they solve that? Our sources must touch on this.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right, it's not just any old pill. The real breakthrough is using something called an absorption enhancer.
Okay.
Specifically, these oral versions use a compound called SNAC, that's SNAC, sodium N8-2-hydroxybenzoyl aminocaprylate, bit of a mouthful. But what SNAC does is it temporarily shields the drug from digestive enzymes and makes it more soluble. That allows the huge semaglutide molecule to actually get absorbed through the stomach lining before it gets destroyed.
Wow, that's clever. So protecting it just long enough.
Yeah, it's a major technological leap. Going from needing an injection to just taking a once-a-day pill, that changes the potential scale of use exponentially.
Okay, so when could this oral version actually land? When might it hit the market and start changing the user base?
Well, the timeline seems pretty aggressive.
Hmm.
According to sources tracking Novo Nordisk, the expectation is that this oral semaglutide pill could get FDA approval by the end of 2025.
End of 2025. That feels really soon. Especially with all the scrutiny and these safety discussions happening, is that seen as highly likely or more of a, target date?
It's definitely the target date, but market watchers seem pretty optimistic, mainly because the injectable forms are already approved, already widely used.
Right, the core drug is known.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the main regulatory hurdle here is about the delivery method, making sure the pill version is comparably safe and effective to the shot. The pressure to approve is huge, no doubt. But if it happens by then, it just immediately lowers that barrier for millions of potential new users.
Okay, so that addresses the delivery hurdle, the injection issue. But cost. Cost has always been the other massive barrier, often thousands a month, right?
Astronomical, yes.
What's changing there? What's going to unleash the mass access on the cost and policy side?
This is where government policy really steps in. We're looking at a sort of perfect storm for mass access brewing for 2026. Two huge things are set to happen around the same time.
Okay, what are they?
First, the White House has announced these specific deals. They're negotiating to try and lower the actual list prices of these drugs. So some relief from that initial sticker shock is promised.
Right, so direct federal efforts on price reduction.
Exactly. And second, and this is probably the bigger one in terms of sheer patient numbers, is the change in public insurance coverage. Starting in 2026, Medicare is set to begin covering these drugs specifically for obesity under a pilot program.
That is huge, because Medicare coverage for weight loss drugs has been, well, basically non-existent or heavily restricted, hasn't it?
Monumental shift, yes. So
Yeah.
you put those two together, potentially lower costs thanks to negotiation, plus Medicare coverage opening up.
It suddenly makes these drugs accessible to millions of people who were completely shut out before, mainly seniors, I guess.
Primarily seniors, yes. People who might really benefit, who often already have related conditions like diabetes or heart risks, but who simply couldn't afford or get coverage for these drugs previously.
Okay, but wait. If millions of people suddenly become eligible and start getting these drugs covered by Medicare in 2026, won't that massive surge in demand potentially cancel out the White House's price reduction efforts?
That's the critical question,
Yeah.
and a huge concern.
And doesn't that kind of volume put insane pressure on the supply chain and on doctors being able to actually monitor everyone properly?
You've hit on the key counterarguments. Healthcare analysts are definitely worried. Even if the White House negotiates a lower unit cost, the total spending by the government and by the system is going to absolutely skyrocket because of the sheer volume.
Right, more people using it even if it's cheaper per person.
Exactly. And onboarding millions of new patients. Supply chain issues seem almost inevitable. We saw shortages just with the initial demand for injectables.
Yeah, I remember that.
So for 2026, it's not just can they make enough pills, it's also can the healthcare system actually handle this scale? These aren't simple drugs. They need consistent monitoring. And mass adoption, especially through an easy, low-cost pill, might encourage use without enough patient education or follow-up. Which brings us right back to the start, doesn't it? Risk awareness.
It really does. So let's try to pull these two threads together from our deep dive. On one side, we have these really high-stakes lawsuits focused on a devastating, irreversible side effect, NAION, blindness, playing out right now, kind of defining the extreme edge of the risk.
The worst-case scenario being argued in public.
And then at the exact same time, we have the rollout of an easy-to-take oral version based on some pretty sophisticated tech, plus the government unlocking Medicare coverage, all set to bring millions of new patients into the fold starting in 2026.
The two timelines feel fundamentally opposed, don't they? Litigation is highlighting the potential for irreversible harm, while policy is driving towards maximum access and minimum cost.
Yeah.
So the key takeaway, I think, for you listening, is just the absolute need for critical thinking about this whole spectrum of risk.
How so?
Well, you need to realize the information you're getting might be bifurcated, split. The headlines are likely going to celebrate the new pill, the lower cost, the easier access.
Right. The miracle drug narrative continues.
While simultaneously, maybe less visibly, the courts are going to be dealing with the fallout, the irreversible damage some users have experienced. Understanding that complete picture, the good, the bad, the potentially devastating, is crucial, especially right before these drugs become available to potentially millions more people.
And many of those new users might be less aware of these emerging, more nuanced safety details.
That's the concern. Mass adoption often means reaching populations who haven't been following the story as closely.
It feels like a classic, almost textbook, high-stakes trade-off. You've got this incredibly powerful tool for public health, for tackling obesity and related issues,
Huge potential benefits, undeniably.
balanced against a risk however small the probability might be of sudden permanent blindness. And now making it accessible to a population, seniors, who might already have a complex mix of underlying health issues.
Yeah, okay.
So given this expected mass adoption starting 2026, and this intense focus on lowering costs and simplifying how people take it, the big question seems to be about transparency, doesn't it? When a drug makes that leap from a more specialized injectable for a smaller group to a simple, potentially low-cost pill for millions, what level of risk disclosure is really needed? How do you ensure informed consent at that scale?
That's the conversation we need to be having broadly. It has to integrate a real understanding of innovation, but also risk management when you scale things up this much.
Yeah.
This moment really forces us as a society to weigh that trade-off.
Yeah.
Highly effective treatments versus rare but devastating potential outcomes. And we need to keep watching, keep evaluating the context as the use of these drugs potentially explodes to levels we've never seen before.
A crucial balancing act ahead.
Indeed. Thanks for diving deep with us today.